Albuquerque moms. I am Jennifer Bryant. I am a registered dietitian nutritionist, and I'm an Albuquerque Moms blog contributor. And today we are going to do one of my favorite go-to recipes for a quick and easy dinner. And so I'd like to take you along today and just show you how it's done. We're going to be making chicken teriyaki, and it's a simple skillet meal where we're going to, first I have some chicken thighs actually that I've chopped into strips ahead of time. And we're gonna do a quick marinade for that. We're gonna let it sit for 20 minutes, and then we're going to cook it on our skillet with some vegetables, and then alongside we're gonna have a side of rice. So as we go along the way, I wanna teach you a little bit about a couple of the ingredients that I'm going to use. The first one that we're gonna add is actually, it's a coconut amino. And so some of you have seen this before, or maybe you've heard of this before and you wonder, what is this thing? Why should I use it instead of soy sauce? And so I'm actually, you can see, I use my coconut aminos a lot. I'm almost out. So we're actually gonna use a combination of coconut aminos and soy sauce today. They have a really similar flavor. The soy sauce, of course, is derived from soy, whereas the coconut aminos is derived from coconut. And so there is some controversy with soy. Personally, the health controversy is not enough for me to say, no, I'm not gonna use soy sauce. So I still do use soy sauce. I actually prefer to use a light soy sauce a little bit better than the regular one. And the reason is because it just has a lot less salt. But since I'm almost out of my coconut aminos, I'm going to use a combination today. The coconut aminos, in my opinion, actually taste a little bit better. So what we're gonna do first, and we're gonna post this recipe online, so if you want to try it at home, you can. We're going to do about a 1/4 cup of the coconut aminos, and I'm just going to actually use my measuring cup to mix everything together. I mean, I don't love washing dishes. If any of you do, you can come over to my house and do it for me. But I'm going to try to save as many dishes as I can. So I'm going to just put in about a 1/4 of a cup here. It looks like I have just enough. And we'll finish the recipe later, and I'll actually have to dig into my other bottle here because we're gonna add a little bit more later, but this will do for now. And then I'm going to use a 1/3 of a cup of orange juice. It can be any kind of orange juice, whatever you like. My husband doesn't like pulp, so I always buy the no pulp kind, but I can't imagine that would make a difference in this recipe. Next, we're gonna add a tablespoon of honey. I'm gonna measure for our purposes here today, but this is definitely a recipe where you don't have to measure everything. You can eyeball it and it works just as well. So you don't need to necessarily measure everything out. A tablespoon of honey will do, and then we're gonna put a few sesame seeds in there as well. 1 to 2 tablespoons, just whatever your family likes. It gives it a little bit of a nutty taste, and so my kids really like that. And then lastly, we're going to add a tablespoon of olive oil. Real mom moment, my glass jar of olive oil that I drizzle things broke last week all over my floor, so I just have to use this for today. So I'm sure I'm not alone there. So we're gonna just add a tablespoon of olive oil. We're going to stir it a little bit. The biggest thing that needs stirred there is the honey. It kind of gets stuck at the bottom, so just make sure you work that honey in. And then all we're gonna do is we're gonna pour it on our chicken. This is a great make-ahead tip too. If you wanted to make a few batches of this, you can easily freeze it and put it in a gallon Ziploc bag and then just pull it out, thaw it, and then cook it on the skillet when you're ready. So we're gonna take a minute and let our marinade marinate for about 30 minutes, and then we'll be back to show you the rest. Okay, so we have had our chicken marinating for about a half an hour now, so we're ready to cook it. I live in a family that loves sauce, so I'm actually gonna make a little bit more sauce to add to the chicken while it's cooking, just to help with the flavor. So I'm gonna turn on my skillet. I'm gonna add a little bit of olive oil. It really doesn't matter which kind of olive or which oil you use. Olive oil is probably one of my favorites for sauteing, so that's typically the one that I am going to use for a dish like this. I also really love sesame oil. I'm gonna actually add a little bit of it also because it has a really nice flavor with some of the Asian dishes. And so I'm gonna add a little bit of sesame oil. It doesn't have quite as high of a smoke point, so you don't wanna cook things at super high temperatures with the sesame oil, with an olive oil either, really. So we're just gonna add the chicken and we're gonna get it cooking. And then while it's starting here, I'm going to make a little bit more sauce. And with this sauce, we're going to simply do some soy sauce and some cornstarch. And the cornstarch is simply to thicken the sauce a little bit so that it's more like a creamy sauce or just a little thicker type of sauce. And we'll let the chicken cook a little bit while we're mixing up that sauce. You do want to mix up the soy sauce and the cornstarch in a separate bowl. I'm making a lot of chicken today because I'm taking part of this meal to a friend of mine. So I'm actually going to use the same, there's some leftover sauce in my bowl. I'm going to use it, and I'm simply going to add about another 1/4 cup of soy sauce. And I had to open my new bottle, by the way. And if you like the flavor of the coconut aminos that we talked about earlier, you can use that again as well. It's really your choice. It doesn't matter a whole lot. The coconut aminos do have a little bit more of a sweet flavor, and so some people like that a little bit better. It also has a little less sodium, so that's kind of nice. So I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of cornstarch to my soy sauce. And I'm going to mix it up again with my whisk. It's important that you mix it up before you start cooking it because otherwise the cornstarch gets really lumpy. So you need to stir it well before you start cooking it with your chicken. And it looks like our chicken is starting to cook here. And remember that you have raw chicken in this bowl, so be a little bit careful for safety. Make sure that after you start cooking the sauce that you wash your bowl really well. I'm a sucker for food safety. So I'm just gonna add the sauce to our chicken, and we're just gonna let it cook until the chicken is done and until the sauce gets a little bit thick. And then once the chicken is done, we're going to cook our vegetables. So our chicken is just finishing up here. We cooked it for about 10 minutes or so. With chicken thighs, you do want to just be careful that the chicken's done. And I cut it into strips, about a 1/2 inch wide, and that way they cook pretty quickly. So the other thing I wanted to say about this recipe is I typically use frozen vegetables, which we're going to cook here in a minute. And you can use any variety of Asian vegetables, or really any kind of vegetable that you like. But I keep them in the freezer, and then I also keep the chicken thighs in the freezer. So that way, if I run out of food, I always have a good, healthy go-to meal. So our chicken's done, so I'm just gonna go ahead and put some on a plate here, and then I'm going to actually move the rest of it into a pan to bring to my friend for dinner tonight. And then we're gonna go ahead and start cooking our vegetables. This pan is huge, by the way. You don't need a huge pan. And also, when you're done cooking your chicken, there's no reason to wash your pan. That just gives you too much work. So I'm just gonna wipe off the side just so the sauce doesn't burn there. And then we're gonna start cooking our vegetables. You can use any kind of vegetables that you like for this. I happened to have a couple of extra bell peppers, so I just chopped them into bite-sized bits. And we're gonna cook those. I'm gonna add a little more olive oil. Don't need a lot, especially if you're using a nonstick pan. So we're just gonna saute our vegetables here for a little bit, a couple of minutes, and then we're gonna add our frozen ones also so that we have a nice variety. These ones have broccoli, baby corn, snap peas, and carrots, but you can add any kind of vegetable. We're gonna have a really colorful dish when we're done, which is one of the things I love to do with my dinners, and it doesn't have to be hard. One of the reasons that our dish is gonna be colorful here is because our rice that we're gonna serve this with is actually black rice. So some of you maybe have heard of this, some of you maybe haven't. Black rice is really a great food. It is just a whole grain rice, and it has a lot of extra antioxidants and phytochemicals from those plant-based foods that we know are good for us. So I love using that. I also actually used a mix. This is just a basmati rice, and so I mixed the two together. One, because I ran out of my black rice. So this is another real mom moment. And then two, because my kids actually eat it a lot better when I mix the two. And so I try to be practical that way. This way they're getting some good whole grains, but they're also getting some of the foods that they really like. So we're gonna let these cook just for a few more minutes, and then we're gonna add the frozen veggies. And so you can cook the vegetables as much or as little as you want. Again, I'm doing a little extra today because this is a meal for a friend of mine also. So really probably one package would do, unless you're really trying to get all your vegetables in, and then you can maybe use a couple of packages. So you hear the sizzle too. One of the things I love about cooking at home too is you really just get a sense of the smell of the food. And we know that actually when we spend time preparing food and we smell the smells, we actually get a lot more enjoyment out of the food that we're eating. So it increases our satisfaction, and so that's always a good thing. So our vegetables are finished sauteing, so I'm just gonna add some of our vegetables to our plate. I love to add a lot of vegetables. It's a really good way to get some good nutrition. And then I'm going to actually add some of our black rice as well. And I did want to say that I made this black rice with a little bit of chicken broth to give it a little bit more flavor. So it's a nice way to kind of pair with all the green and yellow and orange vegetables, and then you have a nice pretty purple rice. So it's kind of fun. And then for garnish, I have just some chopped green onions here that we can sprinkle on top. And then the last thing is we want to put some more of our toasted sesame seeds on top of our dish. And so in about 30 minutes, we ended up with a beautiful dinner plate with some teriyaki chicken that hopefully your whole family will really enjoy.